Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Adriana Hochberg from the County Executive's Office. I want to welcome you to the fourth meeting of the Community Recovery Advisory Group. And I'd like to turn it over to the chair of the group, Elijah Wheeler, who will provide an overview of tonight's agenda.
Thanks, Adriana. Hello, everyone. I hope that you're well this evening and that you're somewhere with power after the passing storms that we experienced a little bit earlier, and maybe a couple of them that may come through this evening. Needless to say, we welcome you. We want to give you a heads up, as always, that we are currently streaming live on YouTube as well as County Cable. The purpose of the CRAG, or Community Recovery Advisory Group, once again, is a diverse group of representatives from a spectrum of communities here in Montgomery County, populations and issue areas that are currently being impacted by the pandemic. The purpose of this group is to advise the county executive and county council on the needs of the community in recovery and how the county can achieve a new normal that is more equitable than before or previous to the pandemic itself. This evening, as requested, we'll be going over two specific issue areas. Our first hour will be discussing voting and election preparation. The second hour will be discussing economic recovery and all the updates in regards to that. Hopefully you all are in receipt of the recovery site reports that Adriana sent you all earlier this week in preparation for this meeting. So as you prepare any questions or some of those things that you may have, I'll be scanning for any of the hands up that you place on the screen. And feel free as well too, as you usually do, to place any of your questions for them to be read aloud in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. With that being said, I will now turn it over to Dr. Earl Stoddard.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to say thank you very much for attending again. We very much get a lot of good feedback out of these meetings. We very much appreciate how engaged you all have been. I do want to touch on just a couple things. Since our last meeting, a few things have transpired. Last week, the state, on Thursday, the state released guidelines for schooling. We met with our non-public schools again on Friday to continue our conversations with them regarding how they can be prepared to operate during the pandemic if they choose to. Obviously, we are still waiting for some additional follow-up that we've requested from the state around certain definitions and what the meaning of things around expanded in person or limited in person, as well as hybrid models, just terminology that we want to make sure the state's clear on. Our first meeting, or our second meeting actually with them on Friday, talked about contact tracing and the process for notification that they should follow with public health so that they could partner with us whenever they may have cases or suspected cases in the non-public schools. We similarly continue to work with Montgomery County Public Schools around expansion of things both within the child care sector, but also opportunities for our ESOL, Title I, and other special education students to get some additional in-school opportunities. We'll continue to work on those. In addition, we are working with them on how to safely operate things like SAT testing, which we know is important for our high school seniors and juniors to begin or continue their preparations for college. So we're working on those things as well. The other thing I do want to touch on is the governor did announce on Tuesday evening that the state itself would be moving to phase 3 of its reopening. We are in the process of reviewing the governor's moves in phase 3. While we will not necessarily be moving to what we are referring to as phase 3, I do expect that we will see some announcements likely tomorrow about things that we are likely to do. They are not likely to take place at the same exact time that the governor's phase 3 takes place tomorrow at 5 p.m., but they should follow soon thereafter as we finalize guidance for certain activities. Areas that you're likely to see things on are particularly related to the live performance area. I know the county executive has been very passionate about his belief that separating out some of the live performance activities is never made as much sense to us in terms of the separation between someone playing a guitar with a group of people versus a gathering of 50 people in Montgomery County. And so we're obviously looking for accommodations there that will allow both our restaurants to do more live performances associated with meals, but also things like Strathmore and other places to do venue specific or venue related indoor and outdoor performances in a limited but reasonable fashion. So more to come on that very soon. So with that, turn it over to our chair, Mr. Wheeler, and he can continue with our agenda.
Great. Thanks, Dr. Slaughter. So as I stated earlier, the first topic on our agenda this evening is voting specifically, and voting preparation, as you all voted for in the last meeting. So with that said, I think we have an opening from our guests first before we launch into any questions. So if that's the case, I do want to offer you an opportunity, Margaret, to give a brief introduction and opening before we get into any Q&A.
Okay. Well, my name is Margaret Jurgensen, and I am the election director here. And yeah, we've been very, very busy here. We have been processing voter registrations as well as literally 125,000 to date vote by mail applications. We've also developed our plan, and it's been approved by the State Board of Elections for the 11 early voting centers, as well as 29 vote centers for election day. That will allow us to have 39 voting sites on election day. We finished the ballot proofing yesterday, so that is going to the printer so that ballots can be printed and mailed as well as distributed at the various vote centers. We are proofing the ballot inserts that will tell you where the drop boxes are going to be located around the county. There'll be 42 of those locations, plus there will be a postage paid return envelope with every ballot that is mailed out by the state board. The goal of the state board is to have the mailing be sent around for those people that choose to vote by mail around September 24th to the 28th. We've just completed the coordination with the state board as to there will be drop boxes will be dropped in 2 phases. The first phase will be by October 1st, and the second phase will be completed by October 15th. We have our drop box currently open, and we hope to get the city of Rockville, that has generously donated their vote by mail drop box, open sometime by the middle of next week. The deadline to register to vote is October 13th. And it's really important for voters to make sure that you can go to our website, 777vote.org, and verify your registration to make sure that your registration accurately reflects where you live and your current information. You can also if you vote by mail, you can verify where your application is in the process. Now, I will tell you that we have a backlog of about 60,000 vote by mail applications, and the county's been very generous with us, helping us get additional equipment, data ports, personnel. So we are addressing that backlog, as well as the State Board of Elections is working with not only Montgomery County, but all of the large jurisdictions to get a data center up and functioning, hopefully by September 14th, to address many of the issues that people are concerned about because they're not getting a response. But it's I'm hoping that the backlog will, with the additional staff, will be able to address it. We're definitely picking up speed. Then October 26th begins the early voting, and all of the 11 early voting sites will be open from 7 a.m. till 8 p.m. And then on election day, the vote centers will be open, as well as the 11 early voting centers, which will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. The drop boxes will be available 24/7. They are under 24 hours, 7-day-a-week surveillance. And there is security as part of that process. And we anticipate that the last 2 days we will have assistance at those drop boxes so that we can, prevent any lines from backing up. One of the most common questions is, well, my wife and I are both voting by mail. Can she drop my vote by mail voted ballot in the drop box? And yes, she can, or you can do it for your son, daughter, niece, nephew, whatever. So there's a lot of things going on here. We're working very, very hard to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to vote. We have our public information officer, Alberto Zelaya, who is working and reaching out to the community. We expect our sample ballot to go out about the same time as the ballots when they are mailed by the state, so that there will be additional information in there about exactly what your ballot is going to look like, as well as where the drop boxes are. And we're going to try to mitigate some of the concerns that people have contacted our office because they think they're supposed to go to a polling place. And so we're going to utilize some of our potential volunteers that will wish to serve as an election judge, but not in a polling place, to help us go out to all of the polling places that are not going to be open, so that there's information there. And our intention is to reach out to the school system to post signs on the door to tell people where are the closest early voting and vote centers. And of course, because of the magnitude of the drop boxes and vote centers and things like that, traffic will be a big concern. So we'll be working with the police to make sure that the traffic can flow in and out of these facilities. And we're expecting crowds on the last day. In fact, if you do not want to wait in line, I strongly encourage you to either vote by mail safely at home, or to vote not on the last day of early voting, or election day, because that's when we anticipate, if there's going to be lines, that's when it would most likely occur. The only lines we saw in the primary election were at 2 sites, and they were at after 6 o'clock. So that might be a good idea. I did just seen a message pop up to work something out with the schools with the lunches. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that our public information officer is working on.
So you can read that. So what we've been doing in the community is we've been holding a series of muted on your laptop. Hold on, give me 1 second. Okay, so one of the things we've been doing is we've been working with organizations like MANA, the BlackRock Consolidation Hub, and the different facilities like Nourish Now, where we're putting hand cards into the food donation boxes with information regarding voting in English and Spanish. We're under Section 203 of the 1975 Voter Rights Act, so everything has to be bilingual in Montgomery County. In addition, we just actually met with MCR SGA, so we're working out a campaign with the school system and with their guardians regarding this. Historically, we've implemented the Future Vote program, but because of COVID-19, we won't work with the younger cohorts, 15 and under, but we're working with the high school students who are 16 and over to assist us to work as poll workers. And so we've been doing a series of Zoom sessions with different organizations, nonprofit, for-profits, HOA. So many of you are involved in your communities beyond this advisory group. So I would welcome the opportunity to talk to your corresponding constituents, to talk about kind of a broad brush, nuts to bolts, A to Z of the election process. I'll make sure that they distribute my information. So if you have a date and timing consideration, please reach out. Right now, I'm totally booked until the 3rd week of September. So anything after that, if you have an interest, I encourage you to book your personalized Zoom session. And as Margaret said, a lot of things are working in the process. And as we get that information, we will definitely share it with the community. So any inroads that you may have, I definitely welcome the opportunity to work with you.
Thank you, Gilberto. We appreciate that. We have a couple of questions in the chat, and then I'm going to go to some of our committee members as well too. One of the questions in the chat was whether or not you had the registration in Amharic, translated in Amharic already.
So in 2018, so in 2018, we worked with the Maryland State Board of Elections, recognizing the diversity. Keep in mind, out of the 10 most diverse cities in America, we have 4: Rockville, Gaithersburg, Germantown, and Silver Spring. You could also include Aspen Hill and the White Oak, Glenmont area into that. Having said that, we were working for some time with the State Board of Elections. And in last year, we got the voter registration application translated into traditional and simplified Chinese and Korean. French, Amharic are on the list. So what we're looking for is, after the presidential elections, obviously the goal will be to translate those in different languages in addition to the mail-in application. It's not just the voter registration, but it is a process. Keep in mind, Montgomery County is one of 24 counties in Baltimore City. So it is part of it is also education. And keep in mind, counties such as Kent County, Wicomico County are not diverse, are very homogeneous, monolingual. So when approaching the State Board of Elections, the discussion is not just about what Montgomery County wants, it's about a public service business model sense of translating documents into different languages, but also the ability for each local Board of Elections to have the appropriate staff to field those questions and to assist the community. So we're working, it's work in progress, and hopefully by 2022, we'll have the other additional languages.
Thank you. Karen, you had a question?
Yeah, I did. I thank you, Gilberto, and thank you, Margaret. My main concern is partially you covered, was the polling places and assuring that people who go to their regular polling place know that are given instructions on what is the closest place where they can drop off the ballot, or the closest place where they can vote. That was my main concern. And thank you for addressing the issue on the drop boxes security. I had a concern about that too. My understanding is that if someone has applied for a vote by mail ballot and they change their mind, they can vote on site, but they have to vote a paper ballot. I just want to verify that. And then the other thing I want to ask is, what type of, do you have any funding, or has the county given you any resources for educational materials on where to vote, et cetera? So in other words, you know, people, there's like, used to be like 240 polling places on election day, around 240. Now, obviously you have far fewer. Are there any educational materials being distributed with respect to exactly where the sites are now?
Well, I'm going to address the education piece. Outreach, we have a very small outreach budget. So it's like, I think it's 60,000, maybe 70,000. But the sample ballot is available, and it's mailed to every registered voter. So that is one element of education. As I said before, we will be going to each early voting center. I'm sorry, there's so many new phrases. We will be going to every polling place, having a sign there. We will have a sign affixed to that location that tells an individual where is the closest vote center. The information is on our webpage, and we are doing some advertising The state board has a much larger advertising budget. You may have heard some of the ads, and they will change as the calendar moves along. So I think we're trying very hard to get that message out. Of course, what government agency would ever say no to money? So I'm certainly open to it, but at this
in addition to is we have FAQs on our website, and currently we're translating that FAQs regarding this current election in traditional Chinese, Korean, Amharic, French, and in Spanish and Vietnamese. So those should be done hopefully within the next week or so. And then we will be distributing that as well with our stakeholders, and that will have a prominent place on our website, those frequently asked questions in the different languages.
Thank you for all that. Another question is, ballots are being mailed on the 19th. Will the ballot drop-off boxes be in place on that date or immediately after?
we didn't hear your
We
question.
didn't hear the question.
Okay, I'm going to ask, can you hear me now? Is that better? Okay. Ballots are being mailed on the 19th. Will the ballot drop-off boxes be in place on that date or immediately after?
The ballots are supposed to begin the process of mailing on September 24th. And so the drop boxes will begin to be delivered, and the state is only telling us that everything will be in place at the designated locations that are within the insert on October 1st. So it takes anywhere from 3 to 7 days for a piece of mail to make it through the US postal system. So people will be receiving their ballots about the same time. I mean, let's see, I think we have 20 drop boxes going in between the 26th and the 1st. So they will not all go in the exact same day. They will be going in they're rolling them out as quickly as possible. Obviously we would like them in on the same day the ballots are sent out, but it depends upon the manufacturer and how quickly he gets them to the state board, and then they get them transported to us.
Thank you. Fran, you had a question about the signature verification process.
Yes. These are, I told some people I was meeting with on another topic that I was coming to this, and they had a lot of questions about the signature, and here they are. If you are doing a mail-in ballot, how will the signature, to what will the signature be compared, and how can people find that out?
We do not do signature verification in the state of Maryland.
Oh, well, that's good to know. What happens if,
But now, the good point. We must have the signature on the oath.
right,
Okay, so you've filled out the form, you've given us your identification, your name, your address, your date of birth, and you are registered to vote based on presenting identification. But in the state of Maryland, we do not do signature verification.
so what that means, because there's been an awful lot of talk, especially from the idiot in the White House, about that. And so people are concerned and scared. That means what you're telling me is if for example, I registered to vote in 1982, my signature's changed since then. That doesn't matter if it looks different. It also doesn't matter if I registered as Frances Ruth Rothstein and I sign the oath as Frances R. Rothstein. No,
that does matter. Well,
so
there's a couple different things here.
Okay,
First of all, most likely 92% I think it's higher in Montgomery County, individuals, when they are getting their driver's license renewed or are getting a Maryland identification, they're, you know, when you register or when you get that, it asks you if you wish to verify your registration or register to vote. And so what happens then is that information is electronically sent to the state board, and then they send that information. So we're constantly updating. If you change your name from Margaret A. Jurgensen to Margaret Ann Jurgensen, we'll see that in the record.
okay,
We
so
will
what,
also have an updated signature of, you know, I mean, I registered to vote when I was 18. My signature definitely has changed since those days. So yes, we would see some sort of significant difference.
okay, so then what I should tell people is Maryland does not verify signatures, but you do have to sign it the way your current driver's license or citizen ID card signature is. Is that
That
correct?
would be, yeah. So I think on my driver's license, it says Margaret Ann Jurgensen, but we'll accept Margaret A. Jurgensen.
But if people are concerned, they should look at their driver's license.
That
and-
would be a good, yes, that would be a good
that.
suggestion.
Okay, and then, okay, so but isn't that signature verification?
Well,
You said we don't do it in Maryland, but what you're saying is you do, but you don't, I mean, you do or you don't?
the process of accepting the registration, accepting the ballot is a very automated process. And so what we're primarily looking for when we log you into the system is that, number one, you sign the oath. That's the most critical piece.
And
If
so
you
that,
don't sign the oath,
is that the signature on the envelope?
yes, that's where it's signature on the oath. And if that signature is missing, then it goes to one or two of our staff individuals. We tried very, very hard to reach out to that individual who forgot to sign. We can only do that up to a certain point in time, and then try to get them to what's called cure or correct their error. And in the process of doing literally thousands of these, you're looking constantly to, you're comparing the signature in a manner because you have to look at the voter file. So if there's
Okay.
something that people see that's really unusual,
Yeah.
and they can bring it to the board and the board can make the decision. But signature verification is not a requirement for voting in for us to process a vote by mail application or vote by mail.
There is a
ballot.
lot of confusion and lack of understanding around that issue, because not only this group today, but other people, I've heard this from them. Is there a plan to publicize that information widely?
I don't know. I would need to check with the state board. Of course, the Canvas process is an open process. We video stream in Montgomery County because of the number of canvassers we have, and people can observe the process.
But I'm saying, but nobody's going to come canvass me in my living room while I'm voting.
I hope not.
So, well, I hope not too. But my point is that if you are encouraging people to vote primarily by mail, you need to give them this information in a very clear format, so they're not worried about it, and so they don't, unfortunately, end up going to the polls, getting COVID, or whatever happens.
We will certainly add that to our messaging for public information, and I can share it with the state board in terms of what their messaging will be.
It would also be helpful, I think, if you put together, I mean, I've taken some notes, but if you put together the official information on signatures and get it out to neighborhood groups, get it out to civic leaders so they can get it out locally, that would be really helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fran. Kirsten, you had a couple of questions in the chat. Did you want to?
I'm happy to let you read them.
Sure. So the first question that Kirsten had is, I have heard that people have registered for vote by mail on the internet, but still received the vote by mail application from the state because it has not been processed yet. Should the person complete the vote by mail application if they already completed the application on the internet?
No, please do not.
Okay. And I think you had another one, Kirsten. Okay. Is the 60,000 backlog in vote by mail applications for Montgomery County or for the entire state?
Just from Montgomery County.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Will, you had your hand up.
Sorry about that. I was on mute. Thanks for that, Elijah. Quick question, and I see Dr. Azalea, I saw you started to answer this in the chat already, but my question was about poll workers and where Maryland, I'm aware of the county, but I guess this is a state question, where we stand on filling the backlog that we have for poll workers. And I'd mentioned that I heard recently that, I guess it was the state board that had reported, I was on a call with like the Leadership Conference for Civil Rights and some other civil rights groups, and they mentioned Maryland as an example, saying that the state board had, I guess, recently reported that we had enough poll workers to staff the vote centers that have been announced. So I wanted to ask if that information was accurate, but also what the additional need was. And I saw, Dr. Zelaya, you mentioned the need for bilingual poll workers continually, but I wondered if you could just talk a little bit more about where we stand on poll workers.
Yes, so, the second one. Yes, so now keep in mind, we have an abundance of candidates or individuals that have submitted an application to serve as a poll worker. It doesn't mean they're going to serve. There isn't, first we have to process the request, then we have to confirm that they are registered to vote. If they're not, our staff will work with that individual to get them registered to vote first before processing their application. Third, after they're processed, then we send them a welcome letter with a login and password and instructions to read 3 to 4 chapters of the election judge manual, which then they will take an online quiz that they must pass. If they fail the quiz on the first try, we allow them to take a second try. Then after 1 to 2 days, once they submit their responses, then we allow them, there's a virtual component of the election judge poll worker training. Once they pass the virtual component, there is still a hands-on in-person training at different facilities around Montgomery County. We're going to institute physical and social distancing, so the class sizes will be small and we will have them distanced. And so right now, so with the live stream and then in person, once that individual has registered, submitted the request, confirmed, passes the quiz, takes the virtual and the hands-on, that's when we will assign them either an early voting location between the 26th of October through the 2nd of November, and or election day service at one of our vote centers. And so to say that we have an abundance of candidates, yes. But once you start sifting through all those individuals, then we will get a final count, and that's how we will staff our locations. And then we do need, like I mentioned earlier, Montgomery County has the 4 out of the 10 most diverse cities in America. So we need the bilingual capabilities, not just in English and Spanish, but in all the languages that we've mentioned in this session, and American Sign Language as well.
Cool. And can I ask a quick follow-up question? Thanks so much for that. Oh, sorry. I was saying, can I ask a quick follow-up question? Just wondering, for organizations, whether they be nonprofit, for-profit, et cetera, that want to help in like poll worker recruitment, are there, like I know you mentioned, for instance, with the youth poll worker program, because because of the situation with MCPS, they're not operating that program in the same manner that you have previously, but are there things that other actors can be doing to help spread the message about the need to have people sign up for poll workers? Naturally, people who are probably younger, or at least in a situation where they might be less susceptible to getting really sick from COVID. But trying to see what other information we can hand out to the community or share with the community to let them know to push.
Yes, no, great question. So we are trying to work with different organizations such as CASA, the Black Ministers Conference, the Alpha, the Kappas, and different organizations to mobilize kind of the younger cohort of our electorate to get, to assist us. But most definitely, once we'll distribute the organizer my contact information. You can reach out to me at any time. And if also, well, we're working with some of the sororities and working with Montgomery College is kind of tapping that younger cohort. We're doing Zoom sessions and informational sessions about the process and also about poll worker service. So by all means, everyone here in attendance, please reach out. And if you could be our conduit and serve as a catalyst to disseminate this information, the better. And we prefer that we start recruiting earlier on. What we don't want is individuals getting 500 candidates in the end of October when one, the voter registration deadline has passed, and two, so has the training calendar. So the sooner the better. Don't wait until, even though election day is November 3rd, you guys think in terms of November 3rd early voting. We're like thinking months in advance. So the sooner the better.
Thanks so much.
October 20th is the deadline to submit an election. Oh, for training, the last training session is October 20th. So, and I believe our training session will begin this coming Saturday. So the sooner the better.
Thanks for that question, Will. Next question, when will mail ballots deposited in drop boxes in October be counted? When will mail ballots deposited in drop boxes in October be counted? Did you hear that?
Am I on? Okay. Okay. The plan right now is the state has given the local boards of elections the ability to begin the canvass beginning October 1st. So depending on how many ballots we have received, our intent is to begin either October 2nd or October 5th, depending on the magnitude of what if we just have a couple hundred back, we'll probably not open ballots at that point because of the number of ballots we normally are expected to work with. But we will attempt to count as many ballots that we can utilizing our canvas teams. And I think right now we're talking about utilizing about 80 people in our canvas teams so that we can, on election night, report not only election night results, but early voting results and help as many as we can vote by mail. But honestly, we have to receive ballots until the second Friday after the election. And if they're postmarked November 3rd, we must count them.
Thanks, Margaret. Jolene, you had a question in the chat. Did you want to ask it? We can't hear you, Jolene.
Never work when I need them to. Can you hear me now? Okay. Margaret, you had mentioned that polling stations may be changing for people. So I was just curious about what kind of outreach was being sent out to community members so that they would know updated information prior to the day of getting there, realizing that that's not their place to vote this year.
Well, there's a sample ballot that is mailed to every registered voter that's going to go out around September 24th, 25th.
Mm-hmm.
Then anyone who registers to vote between Well, actually, this has been going out for at least 3 weeks. We send a insert that tells an individual where the early voting centers are, as well as the vote centers on election day, and that is a bilingual document. So those individuals who've updated their registration or changed their registration or registering to vote for the first time with their voter notification. But the primary method in which we have is just for everyone to receive their sample ballot, read the sample ballot, and one of the messages that we've been sending out for the last 2 elections is make a plan. Plan when you're going to vote, plan how you're going to vote, and make sure you know where you're going to vote at. So that's kind of the message that you'll probably be hearing from us. I mean, that's a continuation of our messaging from 2018.
And also, in addition to that, and in addition, so what we're also doing is we're working closely with our stakeholders and the Office of Community Partnerships to help us disseminate that information. And once again, the lights turned off, sorry. If we don't move, the lights turn off. And at least I got up. And then in addition, once I mentioned earlier, the FAQs will be translated to multiple languages, and that will be also disseminated through the Office of Community Partnerships. And so we're trying to kind of hit those angles and identifying the historically, those communities where the information doesn't get to them in the traditional sense as everyone on this call is used to. We're going to also leverage WhatsApp in different formats, and we're working closely with the faith-based organization because those community leaders, they have the rapport and the relationship with their pastors and their congregations, and so we're leveraging that as well. But I also welcome all of you to share our website and information to these individuals because it's easier. Keep in mind, we are a small team and we're trying to do as best as we can with the infrastructure. But right now, our bandwidth is so focused on the vote by mail application. So any assistance that you could provide is greatly appreciated.
Just saw a question pop up. Can you vote anywhere? Yes, that's the advantage to this election. If you work in Silver Spring, but you live up in Clarksburg, you can vote wherever you want. You can vote either at Damascus, Germantown, Silver Spring, Gaithersburg High School, Clarksburg High School. You just need to go during early voting to the 11 early voting sites. And on election day, there will be the 11 early voting sites, plus our public school sites, as well as we are going to be at the White Oak Community Center, the North Potomac Community Center, and we'll also be at the Marriott Conference Center.
Great, thanks. Another question in the chat, is the entire training and quiz in English?
It's a constitution, in Maryland Constitution requires that the election judges must speak English. So yes, it is all in English. And that's all I can really say. It's kind of a unique requirement.
I see there's a question regarding how can we utilize on food distribution sites, 300 to 500 per distribution is low-hanging fruit. Actually, it's not. We have distributed over 20,000 hand cards to date within a two-week period. So we're going to do another massive print. It is low-hanging fruit, but at the same time, it's being distributed throughout the county. So in 2 weeks, we distributed 20,000, and we're going to do another 20,000 prints. So we're looking at different angles. Yes, it's not the silver bullet, but once again, if you guys, you are advocates within your community, make that connection. Serve as a catalyst and make that connection. I only have 2 hands, and with you guys, I have 90 hands. So if you can help me out, that'll be greatly appreciated. People calling out.
Great. Can you all elaborate a little bit more on youth, specifically age limits, serving as poll workers? Do they get paid or do they receive SSL hours?
So through our Future Vote program and the relationship we have with private and parochial schools, students can earn up to $310 or 25 student service learning credits. So if they work a part-time position and they work 8 hours, they will get 8 student service learning hours. As you know, in Maryland, you must accumulate 75 student service learning hours before you graduate. So it's dependent on the position. But I can tell you that 98, 99% of our students take the stipend.
Laura, I see you unmuted. Did you?
Yeah, I just, hi, this is Laura Stewart, MCCBTA. I just want to make sure that we have that link with you guys, because right now, parents, we have several Facebook groups that are really active right now, and because parents are clamoring for information. So anything we can get from you so we can put that out through all of our groups and our COVID groups, et cetera, that would be great.
Also, I would welcome you guys to follow us on social media and all of those handles. There's a lot of banners. You could circulate that and also retweet what we post within those with those organizations. But yes, but please reach out to me and I will share those banners with you and the information.
Because kids really want those SSL hours right now because there's less opportunities.
Sophia, did you want to ask your question? You had in the chat.
I think some of it has been already answered, but my question was voting by mail can be more prone to human error than voting in person, especially for those unfamiliar with the process, leading to mail ballots getting rejected at a higher rate than in person. So is there any process to help individuals be familiar with the voting process? I know you said some poll ballot has been sent, so I think that's part of the process, right?
So what we did in the primaries, we did a series of videos in different languages talking about the process, how to appropriately fill out the form. Also, the State Board of Elections is working on one that's also English and captioned in Spanish. And so once we have those, we will also disseminate. But once again, it comes back to the same call for assistance. If you have inroads with particular communities beyond the 7 recognized languages in the county, EBU, okay? Then if you have that relationship, please help us serve as a conduit and we could work with that community. And so beyond the PSAs, beyond the FAQs, beyond the Zooms, beyond the leaflet drops, the sample ballots. Yes, there's a lot more that could be done, but we need your assistance to make that connection. And regarding what we try to encourage individuals is remember that the mail-in ballot, voters could request or have a loved one or family friend assist them, but they need to fill out the voter assistance form that's included in the mail-in packet. You read that information. If that individual assists the voter, they cannot be a manager or a supervisor or a candidate that appears on the ballot or a treasurer for that candidate, but anyone, especially if they're providing language skills beyond English and Spanish, because our ballot is bilingual, that individual should submit the voter assistance form with their voted ballot and their signature on the affidavit and mail that back either through the U.S. Postal Service or through our ballot drop boxes.
Okay. And I'm also suggesting, like, for example, if there is like a number that voters can call, definitely there is a number in English, or if there is any other foreign speakers can talk to them on the phone.
The phone number is 240-777-8500. And I know that within that infrastructure, there is access to the language line. So we do have personnel that have language skills in different languages. But in case there's, in case, let's say, the Spanish-speaking officer or individual operator is busy fielding another call, we have other infrastructures that we can leverage to assist that voter.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Deborah, did you want to ask your question about drop boxes?
Sure. My question was how we're making sure that the drop boxes are in locations, particularly some of the communities that are further out and more isolated, where transportation isn't as easily accessible. How are we ensuring that people will be easily able to drop those? And how are we communicating that to those communities?
The drop boxes are at all of the county recreation centers, or nearly every one of them, which are generally off of a public transportation system. They are also at the public high schools, which are also served by public transportation. So the drop boxes, when we set them up, that was one of the items that we looked at. We looked at density of population. We looked at public transportation. We looked at where people were most like, you know, their historical, what they historically did in terms of whether they voted early, and if they did, where did they go in that specific neighborhood. So keep in mind that this analysis that we had to perform, I mean, we were told by the governor that these vote centers were going to be opened, and we had basically two weeks to come up with the plan and identify. The state's requirements did require us to identify the public transportation. We have several that are right off the metro. The conference center is right off the White Flint, Rockville, the Rockville Metro. And there's one more that I'm drawing a blank on. But Silver Spring is right, and Bethesda are all very close to metro stops. So we were sensitive to that, but we also, it's important for you to understand that there's only the state of Maryland, when they decided to go forward with this, there was only the manufacturer that builds these drop boxes. There's a finite number that person can build, and Maryland bought all of them. So, and I kept pushing for more, and I continued to push for more. So, I mean, I came in and I said, you know, if there's another county that doesn't want all of their drop boxes, Montgomery County is interested in taking them. So I am sensitive to the fact that, you know, it's not everywhere, but we have attempted to get as many out there as possible.
I'm just concerned that we do have communities that are somewhat isolated, and and they tend to also be people who might not otherwise vote unless it's relatively easy for them to do so. So I just have concerns about how we can ensure that we make it as easy as possible for them. And maybe the Germantown Collaborative and places like that are important. I just think we should bear that in mind as we're trying to allow people to vote.
Yes, so
give them that
keep
privilege.
in mind, part of our outreach as well, working with community stakeholders, is to tell individuals that if I vote my ballot and I sign the oath and I seal my ballot, I can still give it to a loved one, a family friend, or someone who I trust that does have an automobile, that does have transportation, that is mobile. And so with the 40-odd drop boxes, as Margaret said, we use measurements and we looked at data to place them at particular locations where communities were isolated. But also remember, the United States Postal Service still works as well. Now, I understand that there is a lot of a noise around the U.S. Postal Service, but there's still thousands upon thousands of collection bins around the county and post offices. Now, mind you, in addition, I tell individuals, if you have any concerns, you have the ballot drop boxes at the early voting locations, at the vote centers, at the additional facilities that were added to the vote centers, and the ones like the Board of Elections and Rockville Town Hall, which will expand the net for individuals to deposit a ballot. But then you also have the post office. And the last concern, if you really have a concern, then also we have a ballot drop box here at the Montgomery County Board of Elections, and you could drop that. And there's a question about security measures. Those drop boxes will be under 24-hour surveillance. They're made of galvanized steel. They're about 500 to 600 pounds each. And we're gonna send bipartisan teams to empty those boxes twice a day, including Sunday. So as long as you could get that ballot in that drop box, we're gonna guarantee 24-hour return delivery to the Board of Elections, but we're gonna hold off for about a day before we start sorting and scanning them in to introduce them into the canvas. So as it pertains to the security, they're secure and they're gonna be under surveillance. And there's tamper tapes and seals that are added, and anytime a bipartisan team empties out those bins, it's documented, and then new tamper tapes and new seals are seeded and documented as well.
Can I just jump in? That was my question. Thank you. I'm really glad to hear you're going to be emptying them twice a day. I think that will certainly minimize problems. When you say they're under surveillance, what does that mean? I was stunned. One of my neighbors in up near the YMCA off Colesville said that 2 U.S. mailboxes had been stolen, not taken away by the post office, but people stole them. And they ran after them and yelled at them and couldn't get the license number. So it's possible. And I do worry about that. And I'm sure a lot of other people do too.
Well, first of all, these are just all by themselves 400 pounds empty. So they're not, and they're huge. They're bigger than a refrigerator. So they're not going to be very easy to steal. Secondly, we are coordinating with Montgomery County Police and County Security. So, and as we get closer to the election, we do increase the frequency of pickup.
Great. We want to thank you all for that.
I'm sorry, will they be picked up twice a day and then more frequently, or is twice a day the top frequency?
No, the closer we get to the election, we'll always pick them up twice a day.
That was my question. Thank you.
And more frequently, the closer we get.
And I just had one final comment. I mean, this isn't for Margaret or for Gilberto, but it's for the group, basically. There seems to be 3 major themes and things that we can really do something about in this group outside of what the Board of Elections is doing. And the purpose of this group too is to get information to the community. The 3 things I thought that everyone mentioned that are really, really critical was, 1, what Fran mentioned, all of us getting the information that you basically have to sign your ballot the way your license plate, the way your name is on your license, on your driver's license. We really need to distribute the locations, voting locations. I think there were 35 voting locations to everyone in our network. And the third one, someone mentioned at the very end, was sort of the educational component, which some people in this group can actually work on together. I know a few of us could do it, which is the educational component on ballot instruction, so that your ballot is not thrown out, so that you don't overvote on your ballot. So just takeaways for this group, and this isn't for Margaret or Gilberto, this is for the rest of us. The 3 major things that we can affect in this group and get the information out on is signing the ballot, the signature on the vote by mail, distributing the locations and the names, and educating people on how to fill out the ballot.
Karen, thank you for that. We appreciate it. Folks, we've got a hard stop at the top of the hour so that we can pivot into our next hour in that discussion. We want to thank Margaret and Gilberto for joining us this evening and answering those questions. We hope that as any more questions emerge, we can send those over to you all, Margaret and Gilberto, and hopefully have you all answer those. If you can, we'd really appreciate it. But thank you for joining us this evening. We really appreciated that conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So, folks, as we pivot into the second hour, there's been a lot of discussion around Montgomery County's economic recovery. So joining us this evening is Assistant Chief Administrative Officer for the county, Jerome Fletcher. He's going to give us an update and an overview of the economic recovery efforts here in Montgomery County, and then we'll open it up for question and answers. Jerome?
Thank you, Elijah. I appreciate it. Good to see you, and good to see everyone this evening. I want to thank you for having me. Along with myself, I see some of my esteemed colleagues, Debbie Spielberg, Adriana Hochberg, and Dr. Stoddard on the call as well. I'm going to share my screen. I believe the first thing I'm going to share is going to be something you guys have seen before. This is the recovery chart, if everyone can see it. It'll help better explain the moving pieces to this structure that to make sure everyone's on the same page. So over here, this is where you guys are, the Community Recovery Advisory Group. And part of what we have for the economic recovery efforts are an economic advisory group, as well as mission areas of economic revitalization down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to you about a little bit of both, give you some information on what they are, what they're doing, and where they seem to be going based on everything that we have done right now. And of course, I'll take some questions at the end. So the Economic Advisory Group is made up about 30 of our big thinking business leaders, business thinkers in the county. And they actually are looking at how do we recover and reimagine this county in a way in the next couple of years to what we want it to be as far as economic development is concerned. This group is broken up into 4 different subgroups as of last week. They are talent, capital, speed to market, and hospitality. Now, those aren't the only topics that they will be discussing, but when they looked at the total landscape of where we wanted to go, those were the topics that was chosen by the chairman. The talent topic is one where we're looking at trying to understand how do we actually home grow more of our talent so it can stay here. We want to be able to have an education system where those who want to get certifications can get it. Those who actually may not even go to college have a pathway to grow in Montgomery County. We want everyone to be able to get what they need in this county and stay in this county. As it relates to capital, we want to also leverage the capital power of Montgomery County. We know and understand that there's a lot of money in Montgomery County, whether it's in investments or risk capital. We want to make sure that we find a way in order to leverage that and keep it here. Speed to market kind of speaks for itself. We as a county and other governments are no strangers to taking probably a little too long and having too many barriers in order to get things done. And we want to make sure that our speed to market pace increases very quickly. Hospitality. Hospitality is the one work group that we have in the county right now that has yet to mainly reopen during all of our processes. We know the state is going into phase 3 tomorrow. The county is in phase 2. And a lot of the hospitality, culture, recreation entities are still have their doors closed. So we need to make sure that we think in a way that allows us to be able and be prepared to have a strong hospitality culture going forward, knowing that it was one of our strengths when we ran into the COVID crisis. So here you'll see the economic revitalization box, and this is where our subgroups are located. They are hospitality, culture, entertainment, recreation, retail and restaurants, small business, life sciences, as well as workforce development. Now, these particular boxes are more focused on the response and the recovery that we are actually doing right now. The Economic Advisory Group, as I said, they're more long-term strategic thinking. These are short-term strategic thinkers. They are led by mainly staff from Montgomery County, but also Kelly Groff, who also works in the hospitality industry here in the county, as well as Leonard Howie, who is our WorkSource Montgomery CEO now at this time. All right, so we're going to, let me come out of here, and I am going to just continue to, hold on one second. All right. All right. So talking about our mission area again, it's led by myself, and we are focused on returning the economic activity to a level so that we can make sure that this county can continue to prosper. We believe that the county itself was on a good trajectory based on everything and everyone who we had involved prior to the pandemic. Some of you may know or remember that our EDC CEO, Ben Wu, had just come on board in January of 2020 prior to the pandemic. And he brought a lot of experience and energy from the state and their level of how they did things. And we wanted to mimic some of their issues and ideas so that we could become better as a county as well. As we recognize what we do for the county, oh, my screen stopped sharing. Can you guys see my screen still? All right, hold on, let me pull it back up. Okay. All right, there we go. We do know and understand that, businesses, small businesses are the backbone of the economy of the county, and we do need to make sure that we do multiple things in multiple lanes in order to continue that going. And I'm going to talk about some of the financial relief packages that we've done. I'm going to talk about some of what the other groups have done as well. I do want to make sure that we understand and recognize up front that this is going to be a community-wide effort. This is not something the EDC can do by itself. This is not something the county can do by itself. We need the community, we need the businesses, we need everyone to do their part. And you say, well, what is my part? Your part can be as simple as buying local, making sure that you support the local economy here in the county. The county recently passed legislation so where we could have an increase in the purchasing power within the local community here in the county. That is something we want to promote. That is something that we want to encourage at every step that we can get. Look at the hospitality and culture, entertainment and recreation work group. This work group is a very diverse work group. And like I said, including the hotels and theaters and other areas of catering, they have yet to open their doors. They are going to be impacted by this, and they have been closed for 6 months now. And knowing that the state is just now getting into phase 3, and the county has traditionally lagged behind the state and what they have opened and what they have allowed. That us lagging behind them has allowed our numbers to stay in alignment with our leadership's expectations. And while no jurisdiction is going to be at a zero number of cases and issues dealing with the virus, we have done better than most of the jurisdictions surrounding us. So I believe that we have a good track record of letting our behavior speak for what we actually should be doing, and hats off to them for doing so. The restaurant and retail work group, they are still meeting. One of their biggest issues right now is to try to see how they can be an advocate and a partner with the county on the 10 p.m. alcohol curfew. As you can imagine, that decision affects a lot of people in this work group and a big part of our business community. But the flip side of that is that we did it in an effort to make sure that we were curbing the behavior of the late night activities that we found to be jeopardizing the risk and the safety and the health of the community. Every decision that I can say that the county leadership has done so far as it relates to how we open, how fast we open, has been related to making sure that the public safety and health comes first. We all can get eager at times and we all can get impatient at times, but we have to remember that the condition that we're dealing with is a public health crisis and people are losing their lives, and we want to make sure, and they want to make sure that we don't contribute to that any more than possible. The Small Business Work Group, as I mentioned earlier, their big thing that they're working on right now is they met with Mitra, who was our Department of Permitting Services Director, who came in roughly maybe 3 months ago now. Also, they met Ash Shetty, who is our procurement director today. And the goal of that group right now is working to remove county barriers in the way of getting small businesses up and running. Some of you may remember or recall that during last fall and early winter, the county executive and the council president, Sydney Katz, went on some 4 business listening tours and sessions, and that was pulling us closer to the business community to identify some of the barriers and issues that were keeping Montgomery County from being the best business-friendly place it could be. We had heard for far too long that we were not as good as our competing jurisdictions, and I give the executive a lot of credit for listening to a lot of voices during many months. And we have taken that information, and in addition to Small Business Work Group, we have another group that's working on implementing some of those changes. So those changes should help the business community have an easier time dealing with the county as far as removing pain points and making sure that we're able to get them what they need as soon as possible. The Life Science and Advanced Technology Work Group. This work group is the work group that finished first in our section. They finished first because the leadership of the bio, cyber, and IT worlds that participated on this work group, they didn't stop working. As you can imagine, this is like we said, a public health crisis. Well, we just happen to have life sciences in our backyard as one of the strengths and assets of Montgomery County. So getting them together to discuss how and propose recommendations was not a hard ask, and they did some very good work. The work that this group did is going to be the model of how we elevate recommendations up from the work groups, from what I showed you on the structure chart, up to the recovery committee, up to Dr. Stoddard and his group, then up to the executive and up to the council president, so that we can figure out which recommendations we can do, how long will it take to do them, how much they will cost. And then we want to publicize that and put that on the web and make sure that the community, our advocates, our stakeholders know, what did we do over the last several months? How did we prepare for what's to come with the pandemic? How did we recover from what was being done? Those are the important steps that we are trying to take through recovery to make sure that we not only deal with this pandemic, but come out on the other side even better before we went into it. Our workforce development group is a critical and a key component. We know the unemployment numbers of Montgomery County and the nation right now are way higher than any of us would like at this point. I believe the national average may be around 12 or 13%, don't quote me, but I do remember that our numbers prior to the COVID experience was around 3%. We were well below the national average, and now I believe it's between 7 and 8%. What we have to do is make sure that we have the ability to retrain those who are out of work now into the business opportunities that are available now. We are going to have to make sure that we have different career pathways for them to fall into and get them this and close the skills gaps of what they had to where they're going, in order to make sure that our county can rebound from this particular situation as unemployment is concerned. As I mentioned earlier, Leonard Howie, our new CEO at WorkSource Montgomery, he already has an unemployment initiative that he's been working on for several weeks now, trying to make sure to connect those people who are out of work to those job opportunities as they become available. One other thing that we want to focus on with workforce development as we go forward is we need to create a long-term pathway for those who are not going to college. That was something that we were working on prior to the pandemic. Everyone is not going to go to college, and there are jobs that are ready for individuals when they get out of high school. When you stop and you look at which jobs need, whether it's a certification or an undergraduate degree, a lot of people want undergraduate degrees when they're not really necessary. We were in the process of identifying more roles for high school students to transition and then get that on-the-job training, and then they grow in that way. Not saying that everyone has to directly go to college in order to get to where they want to be. Hold on one second. All right, so now I'm going to stop sharing, and I am going to just talk to you about a few things, and then we'll get into some of your questions. Give me 1 second. All right. So I've gone over how the recovery structure chart works from the mission area to all of our 5 work groups and the economic advisory group. Like I said, the life sciences group, we are pushing their summary up. We want to make sure that we get those recommendations out the door so that we can figure out where do we go and how do we implement them. The economic relief packages is something that the county has worked on and I believe strongly has helped our community. They were never designed to help everyone out of everything because we just don't have the resources or the capacity. But our efforts, and along with the state's efforts and the federal efforts, have put a lot of funding into our community's hands. And I think that we all should be grateful for that. Otherwise, we could be in much worse positions. We created a public health emergency grant that was launched in mid-April, and it wrapped up somewhere around mid-July. And we gave over 2,000 grants to small businesses and nonprofits that totaled over $21 million. Those grants had a focus on the restaurant and retail community as some of our funding was set aside, knowing specifically that those areas were closed for multiple months as soon as the pandemic hit. And as I mentioned, one of the areas still closed is hospitality. We would love to be able to provide our hospitality industry with some financial relief as well. That's still being explored, but there is only so much money available. The money that the county has received from the federal government has already been earmarked, and we are still facing, new challenges every single day. There's also a reopening Montgomery grant program. This program was created to help out those businesses who did survive the first couple of months when everything was closed and needed that additional push to buy either supplies, barriers, and equipment that was necessary to reopen safely. That program is done on a rolling lottery. It's been open for about a month now, and we have received 2,500 applications. We've made 250 awards, and the average grant for those awards are about $3,400. The total amount of funding for that particular grant program was $14 million. So we have more money right now in that program than we have applicants, and we are still encouraging and advertising others to apply as soon as they can so that they can hopefully take advantage of the program. The last 2 things I want to mention are, one, our Economic Development Corporation, that we are plugging into all of our work groups that I've mentioned to you earlier. We believe, and they are supportive of being the leader and the convener for economic development in this county. Some of you may or may not know, but we outsourced our Economic Development Department a few years ago. And with the new, well, not so new, CEO Ben Wu, he understands and he is ready to make sure that they coordinate and accelerate our economic recovery efforts. They also want to help position us and the local economy for long-term growth. And the more immediate thing that we are trying to get them to develop is a narrative and a strategy of how we can brand and market the county. One thing that we need to do is we have to let people know that we are going to get through this, we are going to survive this, and we've got to promote all the great things that we're doing at the same time. Government traditionally does not have the greatest track record of doing that. We've acknowledged that weakness, and we are trying to do better with it. And I think I can guarantee you that you are going to be able to see some improvement in the very near future as it relates to our EDC, the county, the community, and the businesses as we all rally around each other to make sure that we tackle a lot of the economic development challenges. And lastly, I'll tell you about the Ford Business Advancement Center. Prior to COVID, we had a program called Business Connect, where we were able to provide programs and services through our business resource partnerships. And, they provided consulting and guidance to small businesses as they were trying to get on their feet, tackle challenges, and move forward, trying to capture that American dream. But now we have a Ford Business Advancement Center that is going to connect, our existing businesses to resources to respond and recover from COVID, as well as entrepreneurs with resources to start new businesses. As you can imagine, this is a time where businesses are going to have to evaluate, do I keep my doors open or keep them closed? And we want to be there to help them every step of the way. this center is going to have people who are standing next to each other who are going to be at very opposite ends of the spectrum as it relates to how to do business here in the county. You could have someone standing there who's saying, I want to start a business today because I either got laid off or now is the perfect time, standing right next to someone who says, my business just closed yesterday, and how do I pick myself up and move on? Should I start another business? Should I go somewhere over here, maybe to workforce development and get help and get job placement based on the skills I have, or go get some training to close the skills I have to the job that I want. So I'm going to stop there. Happy to answer any questions. I know that was a lot, and I know I went fast, but I believe I was sort of had 15. I think I'm right at the 15-minute mark for the record. But I will say this before your questions, we are excited, and I think that we have the right leadership in place in order to get to where we want to go. And we are nowhere near the end. We are far closer to the beginning than we are to the end. And I know it's going to be a long journey, but we have a lot of people and stakeholders who have supported us. And I look forward to the challenge and doing great things for the county going forward.
Great, thanks, Jerome. We appreciate that overview. A lot of information there, and we will pivot to some questions now. Devang, I think you.
Thank you so much, Jerome, and everything that you're doing, and Elijah. I think, we're in a different economy. It's a COVID economy, and we're seeing, different industries, I guess, do well. The home building industry, you look at Home Depot stock, low stock through the roof. People are building, everyone's looking to entertain outside, and they're building decks. But our county's taken about, I'm hearing from friends, 8 weeks to provide a permit for decks. And so they're waiting. And these are probably thousands of people that could be employed building decks, doing outdoor projects for homeowners, if not for our county being able to provide permits in a very timely fashion. I talked to some people that own a winery, and they said they're being asked to shut down at 6 p.m. on the weekdays when people are congregating, social distance congregating at the wineries, right? So I think our county's got to really think outside the box. What's the new COVID economy? Let's not talk about the old economy. And how can we assist our businesses to really adapt and, hire employees and make money, circulates around our economy much quicker. And that's really what we got to start thinking about, is thinking outside the box and helping these companies during this COVID-19 new economy.
Yes, I don't disagree with you at all. And reimagining how we go forward is one of our priorities. We have spent a lot of time in response. And as I mentioned, our new DPS director, she has taken very seriously what you mentioned in your beginning regarding the time it takes in order to get a permit in order to build a deck. I think you said 8 weeks was the number, and that is way too long for any of us to even think of that we should be dealing with that. I can tell you that she is, and we are aware of the issue that you raised, and we are looking to solve it and work on it as soon as possible.
Okay.
We got a question in the chat. Is it public information to know who received the grants and how much, and based on what criteria?
We do have information that we have released publicly. I believe there were several media outlets who asked us for the information. We are able to provide it. The criteria for who received the grants, it was based on the status of the business with the state, being located in Montgomery County, as well as showing a loss of greater than 50%, which would have began in mid-March, and it would have run into the end of March based on when we started accepting applications. So if someone wants the information that we have submitted publicly that lists the names of who got the grants and how much, we are happy to provide that. I can provide it to you or Adriana, and we can get it to your group.
Thank you. Deborah, got a question? I saw you got your hand up.
Yeah, I apologize. My dog is about to bark seriously loud, I think. So my question is, I work in the intellectual developmental disability and social service field. And even before COVID, we had significant shortages, staffing shortages in just the human service field in general. And it has seemed to me that with COVID, we now have some real opportunities with all the newly unemployed people to start to educate them about career paths, both in terms of the long-term care fields, whether it's nursing or assisted living or disabilities, or all kinds of other careers that flow from that, special education, counseling. There's a whole long list. And I think that given sort of the unique position we're in right now, in the context of workforce development and economic recovery, these are some real opportunities. And I've been concerned that it's just not on the table and we're missing it. And then there's another side to it, which just has to do with bearing in mind that we need to be sure to be offering employment opportunities to folks with disabilities. And what we're understanding about some of the COVID patients is that many of them may have newly acquired disabilities. So we're going to have a whole new set of issues related to that. But my first question is really related to some opportunities that I think we need to take advantage of. So what can we do about that?
So if I heard your first question right, was to make sure that we keep in mind and consider and pursue the long-term healthcare fields where there's an opportunity. Is that what I'm hearing from you as your first one?
Yeah, I mean, there first of all are just vacancies, perpetual vacancies. Second of all, these are career paths. They're terrific career paths. Third of all, these are some of the jobs that people can pursue without college degrees, that people can go into directly out of high school. And with our new minimum wage policies in effect, these jobs provide permanency, they provide full-term salaries, they provide full benefits. They're very satisfying, and people have a certain element of control over schedules so that they can also take classes and pursue other interests as they choose. So I think it's just really important for us to include that in this discussion now.
Absolutely understood. And while I don't have the list of which industries he's targeting right now based on the vacancies and the businesses that he has evaluated, I will make sure that that is on his radar, as well as making sure that he knows that there's a connection there where that could be the job pathway, as you mentioned, where you don't have to go to college necessarily in order to be able to be successful there, because we are trying to find more, because I think more of the community, when we talk about our hard to reach and our underserved population, we need to make pathways as easy as possible, not as hard as possible. And I think that what you're going to see from our workforce development organization is a better focus on not just helping those who are resume ready, as we call them, but making sure that we give those the skills that they need in order to be successful in all the different various career paths that are available in the county. So thank you.
Yeah, and these jobs do that. All training is provided by providers. People have actual transferable skill sets when they're finished. And I think we could do something very intentional to build this up, and that would benefit. We've also, all these fields have been very negatively impacted by the changes in immigration policy, because these tended to be entry-level positions for immigrants. So everybody has to make adjustments. So I just think it's an optimal time to take advantage of a situation that particularly that the pandemic has created.
Yes, it is.
Thanks, Deborah. We had a question in the chat around outdoor seating for restaurants. While it works well in good weather, are there ways that can continue when the weather does change?
So we have had conversations about tents and allowing those, and whether the weather gets colder, you know, there's going to be some outdoor heating that is going to be probably proposed and wanting to be taken advantage of as well. So yes, we are looking to try to help the outdoor dining continue. It was very successful during the warm months, and I think that there are still going to be some desire for that to continue during the winter months, or should I say fall months.
Another question we had was, we were selected by the lottery for Reopen Grant Montgomery. Do we have to make purchases of eligible items right away, or can we send the invoices eventually?
So if you were selected, I believe you have 5 days in order to submit your receipts from your purchase. It is a reimbursement program. It's not a program where we advance you the funds, so you would need to make your purchase, submit your invoice, and then get reimbursed as soon as possible.
Fran, I'm going to let you ask your questions you out of the chat.
Okay. My concern is about people who are working at home, parents who are working at home. In many cases, you know, these are not, well, I'll try to do it quickly. It's going to be women who are mostly affected by this. Women are the primary childcare providers. They're probably going to be, and from what I hear from people who have children at home in school, women are the primary school, you know, the sort of fill-in teachers. Some of these women not only are going to be able to work less than they normally would, but also there are space considerations. The children need space to do their, you know, to be in virtual school, and the parents need space to work. My fear is that a lot of the people who end up dropping out of the workforce in this current situation are going to be women. When the workforce, you know, the economy picks back up, women are going to be left behind because they will have gaps in their resumes. They'll not be up to speed on their skills. And I appreciate that you've listed childcare as one of your issue areas, but is the impact on mothers going to be something that you're going to try to ameliorate?
I'm going to be honest. I have not heard this particular angle on our crisis. I'm not sure I can speak to how employers will handle the hiring of women.
I don't mean employers. I mean, is the county able to do anything to help these families out? And perhaps I just just heard that someone who works for a British company is getting $500 a month because she has kids at home from the British company. I know we don't have the money to do that, but I'm wondering whether there are ways that you can try to keep women in the workforce so they don't fall behind.
Fran, just one little quick point. During the COVID-19 crisis, there is a federal law that allows paid leave to be provided if there's a virtual school situation, for instance, and there's no choice but to deal with the childcare reality that comes along with it. So that is part of the Families First Act, and that's covered at least through December.
Do people know about that?
I'm telling you right now.
I'm not the one who needs it. No, I'm very serious. I think if that is true, and if there is financial assistance available, I think that word needs to get out quickly.
Yeah.
But I'm also concerned about the long-term skill, the long-term gaps.
FAQs. I'll send the FAQs around to Adriana to share.
Great, thank you.
I can send the frequently asked questions about that matter.
Thank you.
Thanks. So did you want to ask your second question in the chat?
Me?
No, I was asking Tho if she wanted to ask her second question.
Oh, okay.
Yes. My question is, we have a project to connect Vietnamese community member with a job because they lost job during COVID, and now we find a job and help them to connect it. I'm asking if do you have any funding for the initiative like this in Montgomery County, or do you think in in the future? Do you have any funding for this?
Funding to connect those who have lost their job to different jobs due to the crisis?
Yes, they lost job. For example, they working at restaurant or nail salon, but now they don't have an income or they close, and now they come back. We connect them with company like make ham, make you know, so they still have an income.
So the county has a workforce development organization. It's called WorkSource Montgomery, and that's what they do there. And they are funded through the county. We pay for them and their organization. So in this example, the people would go to WorkSource Montgomery and they would help identify the right job for the skill sets that they currently have, and then also help them be introduced into programs where they could give them training and upskill as well for a job that's available if they're not already there. So our WorkSource Montgomery would be the entity that would take care of that.
But the community member, they trust the community who can speak the language, and we also, you know, in the small community, people then they can use their own language and culture. They know more than workforce development organization you mentioned. So how do you think if the small organization can take care of the community members like us, if we can have a funding to have our community?
So are you saying that, are they able to translate there to help that community that is different?
Yes, we translate. We have them to fill out the application online. We have them to do resume. We have them to connect with the employer and interview, check, health check, background check, everything until they get a job.
No, I understand, but what I'm saying is our organization should be doing the exact same thing. And if there is a language barrier, I believe that they will have the staff there that can help them through that as well.
Okay.
Hey, let me just interject. Jerome, I think she's asking, is there funding for her group that's helping these people in the services that they're providing? Is there some type of grant that can be issued to them? Is that what you're asking, Toe?
Yes. Sorry, it's not clear.
And the answer is still the same. You still would need to go to our WorkSource Montgomery organization. They have our funding as a county for those type of programs. Whether you're the applicant who is trying to get a job, whether you're the business owner who is trying to run the program to help applicants to get the job, they go through our workforce development organization. So I get the question, but the entity is still the same for the county.
Thank you. Will, you had your hand up. You had a question.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Fletcher. The question I was trying to pose in the chat, and I probably didn't pose it clear enough. I'm wondering if we can get an update on what the conversations the county is having with small businesses that are finding an inability because of the economic downturn due to COVID to pay their commercial rent. I know we've had a lot of conversation necessarily about the eviction crisis for individuals, but I know that small businesses and medium businesses, for that matter, are facing a crunch as well with commercial rents. And so I'm just wondering, one, sort of what that, if you're the right person to ask this question, what that situation is looking like currently, and are there other sort of things the county is doing with that population of business owners to try to help keep them afloat? And then I have a question connected to that, but that's my first question.
Okay. So the commercial rent one is a tricky one, very, very hard to solve for. It was one of the first ones that came up in our work group area, and I know that there has been multiple meetings regarding how the county can play a role in that, but knowing how the bigger picture works, where if the small business owner is given a relax, and some of them have had that, by the way. Some of small businesses some small businesses have been able to work with their landlords in order to get, some relief from their rent during this time, and some have not. But for those who have not, getting the landlord to relax the rent for the small business owner, and then knowing that they still have to pay their obligation that comes to them via the bank or whatnot, has been a very challenging situation. So we don't have an answer for how to solve that yet. It is something we still are continuing wrestling with. But knowing that we couldn't control all the pieces of that particular ladder, so to speak, that's why we did the grant programs that we did, which were reimbursable for small businesses who still had to pay their rent, and we were giving out grants up to $10,000, and that's how we ended up giving out over 2,000 grants in our public health emergency grant program. So there may be another opportunity for us as we continue to see how long this crisis actually has a negative impact on our community as to what we'll do next. But for us, that was the route that we chose in order to help out the small business community.
Thanks so much. And then my second question connected to that, really, I guess connected to the other end of that ladder, I recognize that the county is doing a lot and that the county can't do everything. The county doesn't have unlimited money. And noting, one, we don't know how long the crisis will last, but also two, we don't know if there'll be additional federal help coming down through states to municipalities. And so maybe this is more of a philosophical question, I don't know, but I'm wondering sort of what the county's thinking is around how far we can stretch, right? Like without getting political, certainly if there's a change in administration, perhaps there might be some additional resources coming down the pipe in a couple of months, but perhaps not. And so we know that in reality, the county doesn't have like an endless pot of gold somewhere. So I'm wondering how stretched do we feel that we are and how far we think we can stretch.
So Earl is our money man, but I'm gonna answer Earl, and you go ahead and put your expertise on top of it. But the money that we received from the government so far, I believe it was 183 million. We have identified more than enough ways to actually spend that money based on the needs that we've incurred through to the COVID crisis. There's also a deadline of having to be able to, spend that money, I believe, by the end of this calendar year as well. Now, what we have in addition to that money being aside as our leadership decides how to spend the federal money is then you start talking about the reserves of the county. And the reserves of the county are primarily designated to help offset lost revenues to the county. And based on what we're going through right now, we are going to have probably multiple years of revenue losses that are going to need to be used in some of our reserve capacity. The good thing is that we have the reserves there. We haven't had to use, not to my knowledge, a lot of it up until this point, but we do need to be prepared to use that in case there is not any more money coming from the federal level. And Earl, I'm gonna stop it.
Yeah, I mean, Jerome's exactly right. I would simply add, I think we've spent likely north of 200 million. If we haven't spent it, we know that we're going to have to spend it because of cleaning, personal protective equipment, all the things that we just know will continue to have to be drawn upon. We are working to get, tens of millions of dollars of requests for reimbursement through FEMA, which would be separate from the 183 million. So we're hopeful that will increase the pot of available funding. I think the county executive and even the county council president have made clear that they're willing to go into the reserves. I think, but as Jerome has also made clear, we expect that the revenues for the county, meaning all of the other services that people come to expect that the county offer, are things that we want to maintain as well. So we have to be cognizant of the fact that, the reporting year for when taxes would come in for next fiscal year comes later down the road. We need to have that financial flexibility. So I think that it's not that we're not going to say no to any new programs. Like, in fact, we're talking about other programs for childcare and other things like that. But certainly we're at the point now where we're thinking more strategically about what we need to get done in the short term and keep hoping that Congress will finally come around to act before we be able to go too much further. But that may require some changes in November to see happen, but we don't know.
Well, thanks for that. Everybody vote. Thanks for that.
Mm-hmm.
Jillian, was your question answered about FMLA?
It was mostly in relation to what Fran was talking about. As far as, I mean, I'm one of them. I'm a mom. I'm working from home, and my son is in kindergarten, and it is tremendously difficult. I'm sure lots of you guys already know that. So my understanding is, yes, there is, these special procedures I can take leave, but it's leave. And my understanding is that it's unpaid leave or my vacation time. So then that does, if I run out of my vacation time, then I'm not getting paid. They're just keeping my job like they would if I had just had a baby. So I think that was mostly just to kind of, talk about what Fran was bringing that to your attention. That was all.
And you mean like on a national level, not like a county employee level, right?
Well, I mean, I think, yes, that is the plan that was passed, right? I mean, somebody who knows more about this than I do. I'm not in HR. FMLA is federal, yeah, but I think that, if there was something more that the county could offer, in addition to something like the CARES Act, I'm not super familiar with what all that entailed, but I mean, yeah, there's a lot of parents home who are being affected, not being super productive or fearful that we might get laid off because we're not being seen as super productive.
Okay.
Laura, did you?
Sure. Speaking of reopening schools, which will have a positive effect on our economy, we need to update the HVAC systems with special filters, and also just some of our HVAC systems, they don't have the proper airflow and the exchange rate, et cetera. 6.8 million supplemental was sent over. I'm asking if some of the COVID money that might have not been directly sent to MCPS, could that be used for this purpose? Or is this something that has to be found in the regular CIP money?
I certainly don't want to speak for the executive or council. That's something we would definitely have to, I mean, certainly council would have to, they are, I mean, obviously, as I sort of allude to, the COVID money is essentially spent or will be spent, but certainly we agree that it's important. So, I mean, we'll certainly, I'll take it back to the executive and to council, and they'll be able to provide more feedback there. But we agree that it is increasingly clear that exchange rate in buildings matters. And obviously, as we're talking to Montgomery County Public Schools, we've talked about that as well. So no promises, but we agree it's important.
Thank you.
Right, do we have any more questions from anyone? Going once, going twice. I see you smiling, Fran. You don't want to throw it. You're muted.
There. It would be so helpful if we could get these topics a few days ahead of time. I'm retired. I'm not grappling with a lot of these problems, but I have many friends and neighbors who are. The reason I was able to bring some of the childcare issues to the group last time was because I talked to someone running a childcare facility. The reason I was able to, if we can get those issues ahead of time, we can talk to people who know more than we do and bring you better questions and perhaps broaden the number of people who can participate through us.
Fran, that's a fair question. So with that, I'll go ahead and give the group a heads up about what's going to be on our next meeting's agenda item.
Great.
And the next meeting is going to be held on September 22nd, which I believe is a Tuesday. And the agenda item for that meeting is going to be COVID testing.
Okay.
But there's nothing really discussed with COVID testing, I'm sure. So that will be a very quick meeting. I'm quite confident.
Yeah, just like voting.
Well, look, it looks like we don't have any more questions for Jerome, so we're going to give him back if you, Deborah, it looked like you do you have one? You sure?
Not for that. I just have a general question about a topic. For us, I'm just wondering if we could talk about at some point broadband accessibility throughout the county. It's been mentioned and consistently, and I just think that would be a really useful conversation. So nothing to do with Jerome. Sorry.
No problem. Melanie.
We actually had a briefing from the director of our Department of Technology Services on this very issue with our executive committee last week. And so I certainly think there is absolutely ample material there to have a conversation on. And frankly, we have made COVID related investments in that area. And so I think it is part of our recovery framework. There's plenty to talk about with it.
Thanks. That'd be great.
Melanie.
I apologize because I'm part of this due to a lot of what I think Fran was raising. I was unable to always be on with 3 kids. So I wonder if at the next meeting too, we could spend maybe a little bit of time, because we'll be in school for like 3 or 4 weeks at that point, doing a revisit of like what's really working, what's really not working. And the other question I had is, can we talk about, there are a lot of childcare centers that either have closed or are about to close in the county.
I don't want to, I'll just say we're getting close to an additional childcare proposal. And I think there is very likely going to be an additional ask. Council has certainly suggested there's more work to be done. The executive agrees there's more work to be done. When I say it's close, I think there may be some discussions with the county executive as early as tomorrow. So there's more to come on this. I know a lot of what we're looking at is number one, extended programming through our recreation department is on the table. Additional support for child care providers, including particularly child care providers who provide support to Title I and other special education students, expanding their capabilities. And in addition, we're also looking at the issue of costs, particularly when there's rent being paid to a county entity, looking at that as well. And so we're close. We may actually be able to, I think there's a fairly good chance we'll be able to report on it at our next meeting. Maybe not have a full discussion like we had before, but certainly have a report out on it.
Great.
I don't like to make promises because obviously there's a lot of policy work that goes on in the background, but this is something that I've had a meeting on it this week. It's quite close.
Great, thank you.
Especially since the schools are supposed to be open like in the middle of the month for the some of the providers. So that would be really timely too, because there's still some confusion about why that's happening.
Okay.
All right, folks. Well, it looks like we're almost at the top of the 9 o'clock hour. We want to thank Jerome again for joining us this evening and giving us an overview of the economic recovery efforts and his work here in the county. Jerome, we appreciate it. Thank you for your hard work.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And folks, we appreciate you all joining us this evening on behalf of Adriana, Earl, Ben, Tina, and Ryan. We thank you all for showing up again this evening. We know that it's tough. It's a long meeting, but some really good discussion, a rich discussion. Looking forward to our next meeting once again on the 22nd of September at 7 p.m. Adriana will be sending you out information prior to that so that we can solidify that agenda. And until then, folks, be great. Take care of yourselves. Mask up, socially distance, all that good stuff. All right. Good luck with the little kids at home. I understand. I have a 4-year-old who's driving me bats right now. So I'm right there with you all. But take care of yourselves, and we will see you next time. All right. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.